Hi, I'm Langston, and I'm back on my channel military election forecasting. And today I'm going to be giving you guys my final 2024 presidential election prediction. Make sure to check out my live stream. I'm going to be live streaming the 2024 presidential election results with some of my friends on, my main YouTube channel, Jimlandia. I've left a link in the community post. I'm also going to leave a link as well in the description so you guys can, watch that as well. But anyway, I'm going to be diving into it, like discussing my final prediction. And there's going to be a lot of competitive states that I am a little conflicted about how I'm going to call them, but I'm going to, work straight through them. So first, I'm going to start with the likely states for Donald Trump. So first, I have Kansas, Nebraska's first district, Iowa, Alaska, Ohio, Maine second district, as well as South Carolina. So for my last video, I moved Mississippi up to being safe. I could see Mississippi being likely, but you have seen some conflicting things with turning out rural Black voters in Virginia, as well as in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. So you could see that carry on in Mississippi. In Mississippi, Democrats did excellent in 2023. Like they only lost that gubernatorial race by three. We expected them to lose that by a lot more. So I could see this being under 15%, but for right now, I'm going to categorize it is just being over 15% for Donald Trump. There's some other states on here. We're talking about Montana, uh, Missouri, Indiana, maybe even Utah, maybe even Nebraska's a state. If the trends in Nebraska second and Nebraska's first are good enough. But as of right now, I'm going to bet on all of these states going to Trump by more than 15%. But in Alaska, very simple. I think that Kamala's going to continue the improvements in Anchorage. The city of Anchorage itself, as well as some of the military bases around Alaska, Fairbanks as well. Like Democrats have room to improve there. You could see Trump continue to make improvements with Native American voters. And with some of the working class voters in Alaska, but Alaska is a pretty moderate libertarian state. I think Trump will win it by about 7 or 8% at the end of the day. In Kansas, I think that Donald Trump is going to win the state by like 11 or 12, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe 13. And, Democrats are doing well with turnout in Johnson County, a very left trending county that makes up 25% of Kansas population, as well as, Topeka, some of the other areas. As you see, Johnson trended 11 points to Democrats in 2020. If you go to 2016, you'll see that this county also trended pretty dramatically to Hillary Clinton. In 2012, Mitt Romney won this county by 17. Trump only ended up winning it by 2. So Hillary Clinton did 15 points better than Barack Obama in this county. So we've seen multiple election cycles. And I'm sorry, in the abortion referendum in 2022, Democrats won the pro-choice side won that county by 37. So it's a lot of moderate pro-choice voters, in the suburbs of Kansas, as well as Nebraska's first district, also trending, pretty dramatically to the left, primarily anchored because of Lincoln. As you see, 8 point shift to the left, some of the Omaha exurbs as well. I think that that will go to Trump by under 15%. In Iowa, I know we have the Seltzer poll that had Donald Trump losing Iowa to Kamala Harris by 3, but I think that Ann Seltzer released that poll not because she thought Trump had a chance winning Iowa. Even in the poll, Kamala was only at 47. So if Trump got to 53, like that's like I'm trying to see like that's a Trump plus 6, right? So I think that she released the poll because she wanted to show that the polling industry was dramatically underestimating Kamala. We saw this in 2016, 2020 polls severely underestimated Donald Trump's support. So after 2020, polls started creating older, whiter, less educated samples to create electorates that were more Trump friendly. And because of that, you've seen polling that is a lot more Republican than the actual results. And we saw this, in 2022. So I think Ann Seltzer just wanted to shake the polling industry up and let you guys know, like, hey, y'all are polling the race wrong. Like, y'all are underestimating Kamala. And I think that's why she released the poll. And she went more in depth as to why she released it in on MSNBC if you guys want to check that out. But anyway, like, I don't realistically see how Kamala can even lose Iowa by even 5. Like, I think that the ceiling for Kamala is like a 6.5, 7 point victory. I do want to say that there's a lot of room for Trump to fall into Des Moines suburbs. I think that he probably will end up losing Dallas County. Like, this is a very left trending county in Iowa. You see this county turning 7 points to the left. Donald Trump only won it by 2. He could easily end up losing this county. I think Kamala can improve in Des Moines. She's going to do well here. This is a very university town, Johnson County. Do well in Davenport. She's going to do better probably in the cities, in the suburbs of Iowa. But I think Trump is either going to improve or keep these areas stagnant, like not make any gains and make some very small improvements. I think he's going to win Iowa by like 7 or 8, maybe a little bit more than that. But I don't realistically see how Kamala does better than Joe Biden's performance in 2020. In Ohio, this state could be interesting. Like I do think Donald Trump is going to win it by about 8. It could be about 7. But Democrats have done very well with turning out Black voters in Cleveland. A lot of people are projecting that Ohio might trend a percent or so to the left. I have caution on that. It is worth noting because, turnout is probably going to be higher there than it was in 2020. But people need to realize that high Black turnout in Cleveland and inner cities in Ohio, as well as improvements in the suburbs, is just enough to keep Ohio stagnant. In 2020, Black turnout was a lot better in Ohio, and Biden made some dramatic improvements in the suburbs of Cincinnati as well as in Delaware, and that kept Ohio stagnant. It just was able to balance out the gains that Trump made in the working class areas. So I think that Trump's gains in the rural areas might be a lot less stagnant. I don't think that he's going to gain as much ground as he gained in 2020. So it could be a little bit less than it was in 2020, but for right now, I'm going to bet on it being roughly the same. And I have Trump winning here quite convincingly. In Maine second district, this is a very white working class district. The very weak Republican candidate, I think his name is Paul LePage, when he ran for governor in 2022, he was like a white nationalist, and he still won his district by 3 points. So I don't see a scenario where Kamala wins the district. I know there's been some really good polls for Kamala in Maine second, as well as Jared Golden, and I think Jared Golden will win this district. But I don't see a scenario where Trump even wins district by less than 5. Like I think Trump is going to do quite well in the white working class parts of this district. And I could be wrong, but for right now, I'm going to bet on Trump winning here by at least 6 or 7. In South Carolina, there's some conflicting things because Trump has convinced a lot of his supporters to vote early. So the electorate in South Carolina has been a lot wider than it was in previous elections, but you're still going to see a lot of the Black rural voters, a lot of Black voters vote on election day. We've seen this, in past elections. I think that Trump is only going to win South Carolina by like 11 to 13%. Even in 2016, when Hillary Clinton significantly collapsed Black turnout in South Carolina, she still kept Trump from winning the state by more than 15%. So I do think that Donald Trump's going to perform quite well here with a lot of the white rural voters around the South. But I do think that Kamala will keep it, under 15. I don't think it even come close to being a Trump plus 15% margin. So now I'm going to move on to the likely states for Kamala Harris, and I have Minnesota going to her by likely, New Mexico, as well as Virginia, New Hampshire, as well as Maine as a state. In New Mexico, I think Kamala Harris is going to do pretty well with Hispanic voters, as well as educated white voters in the Albuquerque suburbs, as well as in Santa Fe. So with that, as you saw, these areas trended, pretty dramatically to the left. I think that's going to continue. You could see Trump make some gain with some rural, lower educated Hispanic voters, but regardless, I do think that Kamala Harris is going to win the state by 9 to 11 points. In Minnesota, I said it's going to be very interesting because I'm starting to wonder, like, are Democrats almost maxed out in Minneapolis and St. Paul? Because in 2022, like, you keep seeing Democrats get 70-27 and like 71 to 26. But I think Kamala's going to make some improvements in the Minneapolis suburbs, and in Minneapolis as well as in St. Paul itself. I do think Trump might make minimal gains or slight gains in the white working class parts of the state, but I still think that Kamala's going to win the state by 7 or 8. I don't buy into the notion that Tim Walz is going to help Kamala in Minnesota because Tim Walz isn't even that popular in Minnesota, and he barely even outran Joe Biden in 2020. So I don't see a white working class voter in Minnesota who didn't even vote for Tim Walz in 2022 voting for Kamala in 2024. But I do think that Kamala will win Minnesota by the same coalition that Tim Walz as well as Biden was able to put together, is by doing really well in the Minneapolis suburbs and in Minneapolis and St. Paul itself, as well as uh, the Iron Range. But this county is a very educated county. Like it's not really a working class county at all, which is why it's so left trending. It has like I think 60% of people from in this county have a college degree. But in those areas as well as Olmsted County, also very left trending. As you can see, she's going to do quite well there. In New Hampshire and Maine, very similar states. I think Kamala Harris is going to do quite well with educated white voters. Maine's first district as well as New Hampshire are very educated overall. And I do think Trump can make improvements with the working class parts of these areas, as I talked about in Maine's first district and some of the working class parts of New Hampshire. But I still expect for Kamala to win New Hampshire by about 7 to 8. I think they should win Maine by 8 to 11, maybe I would say 9 or 10% in my opinion. But that's what I predict. In Virginia, Trump is just being so overestimated. Like Republicans need so much to happen to win Virginia. Like even in 2021, when Youngkin won, that was a D+3 electorate. Like if Biden and Trump were on the ballot in 2021 in Virginia when Youngkin won his race, Biden would have still won by three. So you get the point. Like in 2021, you saw black turnout just collapse in Virginia. And you also saw a lot of the more liberal voters in the Nova suburbs just not turning out to vote. But in this election, like that's not going to happen. Like I do want to say that the early vote has been a lot wider than it has been. You can't really track Virginia's electorate by race like other states, but regardless, like it's been a lot of good turnout in some of the rural areas. You kind of seen black turnout lack in Norfolk and Richmond. Democrats have done very well in the Nova suburbs themselves, but you have to realize like a lot of these black voters outside of big cities, like only reason you see a lot of black people in Georgia and North Carolina vote early is because a lot of black people in Georgia and North Carolina are college educated. But if you think about it, like in Michigan and Pennsylvania, like these voters usually vote on election day. So, I still expect for Kamala to do well with black turnout in Virginia and continue the trends in the educated parts of, Nova, et cetera. Like, I think she's going to do better in Fairfax as well as in Loudoun. And I think that that's going to give her like probably a 10, 11% victory. I think she could even do better than Biden, or she might just do a little bit worse if, you do see some issues with black turnout going into election day. I forgot Nebraska's second district. Very similar. She's just going to improve with educated voters. I think she's going to win his district by like nine. So now I'm going to move on to, I forgot another likely state, Donald Trump. That's Florida. I could see the state being lean. Like Democrats have started improving a lot in the early vote, but I just think that the trends and, Southern Florida is just too bad. I think the Democrats are going to hold on in Miami-Dade. They still have the Haitian American vote. Like they have, Puerto Rican voters. They have educated white voters in Miami. Like they have a coalition that's strong enough to withstand if Trump is able to continue the improvements with Cubans as well as Venezuelan voters in Miami-Dade. I think Kamala's going to do quite well in Broward. Orlando, she's going to probably improve in Duval County. Biden was able to flip this county in 2020. But I think that Trump is going to do well in the panhandle. And, either he doesn't make improvements or he makes minimal improvements with, Cuban voters in Southern Florida as well. So that brings Trump to like a Trump +5, Trump +6 Florida. It could be a little bit less, but that's what I'm going to bet on. For the lean states for Donald Trump, I only have one. That state is Texas. So in Texas, I think Kamala's going to outperform our polls. Donald Trump won the state by 9 in 2020, 2016. He only won it by 5.5 in 2020. And I think that you're going to see the trends in the Dallas suburbs as well as the Austin suburbs continue. Like I think that Kamala is going to flip Collin County. I could see Kamala flipping Denton or Trump nearly holding on to the county. I do think that Ted Cruz will lose his county in the Senate race, though. The I don't think that Kamala cracks 30 in Montgomery. Like, even though this is a left trending suburban county, like, look at how many votes this nets Trump. Like, Trump netted over 100,000 votes in this county. So, I think that Trump's going to do well with rural voters in Texas. He could continue the improvements in the Rio Grande Valley, or, I think this is controversial, but I could see him not really making that much improvements. And if he does make improvements, it's going to be a lot smaller than it was in 2020. But I think that the suburbs of Dallas and Austin are going to clear Donald Trump. I don't think that, he's going to come close to losing the state. I think that he wins it by 3 or 4, but I'm going to stick by it. Like, I think that Collins going to continue the momentum you've seen Democrats do. In 2022, Democrats did very well in the suburbs, like, especially considering the turnout disadvantage they had. Like, you actually look at what they got out of the suburbs of Texas, they did very well. Like, let's go to this election. So you'll see, for example, this is a county. Biden lost his county by 4.5. Beto O'Rourke only lost it by 10, right? Torrance, Beto O'Rourke lost his county by 4. Biden barely won it. Williamson, Beto O'Rourke lost his county by less than a point. Biden only won this county by what? A little bit more than a point. So he only did a couple points worse than Biden in the suburbs and with a much more Republican electorate. It just shows you how left Trinity suburbs are in Texas, and that's going to continue. Democrats have done a pretty good job of turning out voters in Houston, Austin, and Dallas going into election day. So I do think Democrats will make some improvements, but I still expect for Trump's firewall with rural voters across the state to hold him to a, still quite substantial victory. So now I'm going to move on to the lean states for Democrats, and this is I have Democrats winning Michigan as well as Pennsylvania by lean margins. So in Michigan, Democrats have just really been juicing up black turnout in Detroit as well as in Flint and some of these other cities in the state, Saginaw. Like I think Kamala might hold on to Saginaw County just because of how high black turnout is in the city of Saginaw. Trump will make improvements in the working class parts of the county, but I think Kamala could end up holding on in this county just because of the turnout in the city of Saginaw itself. But Democrats have done very well with black voters in Detroit. Kamala's going to continue to improve in Oakland as well as in Ottawa and Kent County. Donald Trump can continue making improvements in the working class parts of Michigan. Like there's still a lot of room to improve here. As you see, he's only getting 68% of the vote here, 67, 64. Like he can definitely get these numbers up, some more. So I think that he has room to improve here. I think that he might do a little bit better in Macomb or, do the same as he did in 2020. You keep hearing people talk about the Arab vote in Michigan, but Arabs only make up 2% of Michigan's electorate, of 2% of Michigan's population, like only 1% of their electorate. Even if every Arab voted for Donald Trump in 2020, Biden would have still won Michigan. So when you're looking at that 200,000 Muslims in the state, you have to factor in, okay, how many of those can even vote? Like how you got to realize like that's counting immigrants, that's counting those that are under 18. So you got to get the voting population, right? Biden didn't win every Muslim. He didn't even win every black person in Michigan. So you have to factor that in, right? And you have to factor the turnout of that. So you remove every Arab vote that Biden got from Michigan, Biden still wins Michigan by more than a point. So again, like the numbers just aren't there for Trump to realistically come up winning Michigan. In Pennsylvania, I can see this being lean. I can see this being tilt. But Donald Trump is going to probably lose ground in the Philadelphia suburbs as well in Allegheny. And that's kind of the problem with Donald Trump is like Democrats are going to hit their totals in these kind of like these are very high propensity educated voters. So Democrats are going to hit their numbers. They're probably going to win Allegheny by like 23. They're going to win Chester by 20, Montgomery by pushing 30 points. Cumberland County, another left trending suburban county. Donald Trump won his county by 10. I expect him to only win it by like 5 or 6 against, in this election. And I do think Donald Trump will make improvements in Lackawanna. I think that he'll make improvements as well as in Monroe. In Lehigh, I thought he was going to make improvements. This is a very Hispanic county, very Puerto Rican. The city of Allentown trended to Donald Trump in 2020. But with his comments about Puerto Ricans, I'm not saying that he's not going to improve with Puerto Ricans in Florida, but I think that the shift would be a lot less drastic as it would have been if that would have never happened. But regardless, like can Trump even get to his 2020 totals in this county? And even if he does, it's not enough. Like Trump blew it out the water with turnout in these rural counties and it wasn't enough. And on the flip side is can Democrats get black turnout up in Philadelphia? So I'm not gonna say we're not like Democrats don't have issues of their own, but black voters in Philadelphia and white working class voters in Pennsylvania are both, I mean white rural voters in Pennsylvania are both low propensity voters. So both sides have their issues with them. But who aren't low propensity voters? Voters in Chester, voter in Allegheny. Like these are voters who are going to vote. So with that, like Kamala does have the advantage. I do see a path for Donald Trump in the state. He needs her black turn in Philadelphia to fall. He needs to stagnate Kamala's improvements, and in the Philadelphia suburbs as well as in Allegheny. And if Trump really runs it up, he really runs it up in these rural parts of the state. He really like. I'm talking about almost flips Lackawanna. Like he cuts the margin in Lehigh and black turn in Philadelphia collapses, he could win Pennsylvania by like 10,000 votes, 15, 20,000 votes. But the most likely scenario is a Kamala victory, and that's something I'm going to predict in this, in my final prediction. So now I'm gonna, be moving on to the tilt states for each candidate, and I have only one tilt state going to Donald Trump, and that is the state of North Carolina. So in North Carolina, I think that Donald Trump will hold on. I do want to say that at first I thought Kamala was done in North Carolina. I did. And not looking at the electorate, I do see a scenario where Kamala can win. I don't think it's the most likely, but I do see it. Like someone brought up a good point is what you're seeing is a lot of these white voters from election day that are voting on in person. So that's why North Carolina's black electorate looks a lot worse than it actually is. Like black turnout in North Carolina is like exactly the same as it was in 2020. And Democrats are actually doing pretty well in Mecklenburg. Like Mecklenburg has higher turnout right now than Cabarrus and Union County. So that's very good. So, they're doing pretty well in Charlotte. They are really struggling in the black belt though. Like that is something that needs to change. I do want to say most black rural voters do vote on election day. Kamala will likely lose ground here just because of demographic changes. This part of North Carolina is becoming a lot wider. You're having these voters move to Charlotte, move to Raleigh, places with better opportunities. I do think Kamala improves in Wake County, in some of the suburbs in this area, but I do think that Trump is going to continue to make improvements, in Appalachia. Like he's going to make improvements in the white working class parts of North Carolina. You have to realize, like, Trump still has room to grow here. Like The rural parts of North Carolina are nowhere near as red as Georgia. Like Appalachian County, Democrats are getting 44% of the vote. Like that's like Biden even did better in some of these counties. Like I think that's going to change. Like I think that Trump's going to continue to improve in some of these areas. Like Republicans have a good amount of room to improve. Like North Carolina is very white, very rural, and yes, the white population of North Carolina is more educated than in Georgia. But regardless, like I still think Trump is favored. I could see Kamala winning it if Democrats do what they need with black turnout on election day in North Carolina. I can see a very extremely, extremely narrow victory for Kamala. I do think that Kamala's chance in North Carolina are better than Trump's in Pennsylvania. That's controversial, but that's how I feel like when looking at the data. But regardless, like I think that Trump has a fundamental advantage in North Carolina and can't no one like no delusional Democrat who thinks that North Carolina is more favorable to Kamala than Georgia is going to change my mind. Period. Um, so now I'm going to move on to the tilt states for Kamala. And the most confident one I am is Arizona. The last three states, I'm not. I talked about this in my last video, but I am very. I'm trying to say like I'm very iffy about all three of these states. So in Arizona, I do think that Kamala has the advantage. I know the polls have Trump winning the state. There have been some polls showing Kamala winning, like CNN, etc. But Maricopa, this is what matters. It's the left trending, the Phoenix metro area is left trending. You can hear people say, well, immigration, the border, the economy. Well, in 2008, during like the recession, educated white voters still backed McCain. Like McCain did a whole lot better with suburban voters than Trump did because those voters were the least affected by economic turmoil. In 2022, people forget, but there was a caravan outside of Arizona's border. Like immigration was huge in Arizona. Like the immigration, like there was a whole lot of like illegal immigration coming into Arizona in 2022, but you still saw Democrats win. So a moderate educated white voter in Phoenix is not affected by immigration. Like they're not affected by economy. Like when you're upper middle class, like yes, things might be a little bit more expensive, but it doesn't affect you the same way it affects a working class voter who would be more willing to vote for Donald Trump. So I do think that Trump can continue to improve in Santa Cruz County and Yuma. He did that even in 2020. But look at the votes. What 19,000 votes in total in this county? 60 something thousand votes here. Look at this two more than 2 million votes cast in this county. So again, it's like these are very high propensity voters, and I think Trump could improve with Hispanic voters in the city of Phoenix. But the suburbs of Phoenix itself, we're talking about Glendale, we're talking about Mesa, where the mayor of Mesa has even endorsed Kamala Harris. Mesa is like where Republicans really let the votes out of Maricopa, like where the 995,000 votes came from in Maricopa. A lot of that comes from Mesa. So you have Kamala, who has the support of Liz Cheney. She has the support of Liz Cheney. She has the support of the mayor of Mesa. She has the support of Jeff Flake and of a lot of the people in the McCain family. So a lot of those moderate Republicans, center right Republicans, they're going to break for Kamala. They did in 2022. They did in 2020. They did in 2018. And even in 2020, I'm sorry, even in 2022, Republicans had more than a 200,000 vote advantage going into election day. They still end up losing the Senate race by 5. Katie Hobbs still outran Joe Biden. So with that, I'm gonna bet on combinations chances. Like 2022, the only election I was wrong was I betted that Katie Hobbs would lose Arizona, and after that, I would never bet against a Republican losing against a Democrat losing Arizona against a Trump Republican. And also another argument to back up my point is that you rarely ever see the Senate candidate dramatically outperform other candidates in Arizona. For example, in 2020, polls had Mark Kelly destroying Martha McSally and Biden and Trump being in competitive race. On election day, Mark Kelly only did 2 points better than Joe Biden, right? 2022, polls had Mark Kelly being competitive with Blake Masters, and they had Carrie Lake washing Katie Hobbs. And they had Katie Hobbs getting destroyed. On election day, Katie Hobbs only did 4 points worse than Mark Kelly. So I don't see a scenario where I think that Ruben Gallego was only going to do about 4 points better than Kamala, maybe 5 points at max. Like you get the point. Like there isn't that much room like for dramatic changes you see in the state. But moving on to the last three states, and the state I feel the most confident calling of these three is I'm going to start with Nevada because John Ralston called it. I do want to say that Republicans did gain some ground, but you're going to see that. You have to realize like it takes Democrats forever to count all the ballots in Las Vegas. So what you're seeing now, like there's going to be a whole lot more Democratic votes in Las Vegas by the time that election they actually call Nevada as a state. Like I do expect for Kamala to hold up in Clark. I think she's going to improve in Washoe, and I do think Trump's going to continue to do really well in the rural areas. I could see Trump making improvements with Hispanic voters in Las Vegas, but I think that Black voters, Asian Americans, educated white voters, if you educated white voters in Nevada, that three group coalition will give Kamala Harris a state. I could be wrong. I do see a path for Donald Trump in Nevada. I've talked about this. But right now, I'm going to bet on Kamala Harris's call because I've seen numerous Nevada election predictors suggest it, but I do definitely see a path for Nevada. So if Donald Trump does end up winning Nevada, I don't want to hear no one say I told you so because I do see that path for him. So these last two states are very, very difficult to call. And in Georgia, I'm going to give Georgia to Kamala Harris. And, in Georgia, what you have seen is Democrats have hit their 2020 turnout numbers with Black voters in Georgia. And something that you've never seen is Democrats are building a momentum. Like every day in Georgia is getting blacker and blacker and blacker and blacker. And that's very problematic for Donald Trump. And, Donald Trump turned out a lot of he wasted a lot of his rural turnout on in early elections, but usually you see those voters turn on election day. But rural Black voters always vote on election day. Like you're going to see Black people in Atlanta who vote on election day, but a lot of the rural white voters they've already voted for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump still needs to improve turnout and up here, but he still needs to improve turnout down here. But right now, like I'm confident in Democrats' chances. Like they only need to get 2022 numbers in these counties to hit their more than 2020 total. And people need to understand is like, yes, Donald Trump might have outperformed 2020 turnout here, but that's to 16,000 votes. Like this is 241,000 votes for Joe Biden. Like so you're seeing these counties being very left trending. I think Democrats will come close to flipping Fayette County. This is another one of the southern Atlantic counties this became rapidly more Black and educated, which is trending it dramatically to the left. And I think that, Georgia's going to be close. Like, I think Trump is going to do very well with white rural voters. I think that, he still has a good amount of them left to turn out on election day. But Democrats also haven't maxed out their Black turnout supply either. So that's going to cancel each other out. We hear people say, oh, Black people only make up 26% of Georgia's electorate. But if you notice something that's weird, is the others have dramatically increased in terms of their share of the electorate. So you mean to tell me that the white electorate has shrunk from 2020. The Asian electorate is the same. The Hispanic electorate is the same, but the Black electorate is smaller. So who are the others? Like, I'm trying to say, like, and I know who the others are because I'm a registered other in Georgia. Like, I'm a Georgia voter and I'm a registered other. So I know the others are niggas. I'm sorry, Black people, because I'm trying to say, like, I know plenty of people in Georgia that are registered others who are Black. And I'm not saying that there might be registered others that aren't, but most of the registered others in Georgia are coming from the cab. They're coming from Fulton, and the others are Black because every time the share of Georgia's electorate is Black goes up, the share of the electorate is other goes up. Every time the share of the electorate is white goes up, the share of the electorate is other goes down. So you get a good idea as to who the others are. In Georgia, others, if you're biracial, you're still classified as Black. Like I know hella biracial people. I don't know not one biracial person classified as other. They're classified as Black. So I'm hearing people say, oh, these are multiracial people. Like, no, they're not. And Georgia is a southern state, still got the one drop rule policy. Like if you have a Black parent in Georgia, you're being classified as Black. So mixed people in Georgia are still classified as Black if they're half Black. The others are a group of people who are not showing their racial identity under their voter registration, like me. So again, if you add that to Democrats total, if you just say half of the others are Black, which is a conservative estimate, because most experts think that the majority of the others are Black. Democrats have added 200,000 more Black people to how many they have already. That's extremely problematic for Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump has the numbers. Like, let's say he really turns out rural voters here and Democrats don't hit their expectations with rural Black voters, especially in Macon and Augusta, in Savannah and Columbus. And let's say the Democrats barely hit their totals in the Atlanta metro area. You could see a narrow Trump victory across the state. But right now, looking at the fundamentals, I think Kamala does have the narrow advantage. I do definitely see a path to Donald Trump. I'm not going to sit up and deny that. And I've talked about that in previous videos. But right now, I do think Kamala Harris is favored. Wisconsin is a state. Donald Trump is very counted out. I do want to say the poll in Seltzer really kind of changed my mind about Wisconsin because there's definitely similarities between Wisconsin and Ohio and Iowa. But Trump does have a good amount of room to improve in working class rural parts of Wisconsin. Uh, you know what I'm trying to say? Like Donald Trump improved in these areas, but the problem with Donald Trump is like he's just not improving fast enough. Like 4, 3 points, 2 points, like that's not enough. Like he needs to really drive up turnout, and he needs to dramatically shift these counties to the right, and he's not doing that. So right now, I do think that Kamala would be the no advantage in Wisconsin because she's got to improve in the wild counties. I think black turnout in Milwaukee is going to be pretty decent. We know young turnout in Madison is going to do well. Is going to be well. You do want to see Kamala really drive turnout up here, and I think that's going to give Kamala a very, very, very narrow victory across the state. I could be wrong. I see a path for Donald Trump in Wisconsin. I've never denied that. I've always talked about it. But right now, I don't realistically see too much of a change from 2020. I have Donald Trump winning. I have Donald Trump at 235 electoral votes. I have Kamala Harris at 303 electoral votes. So that's my final presidential election prediction. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below. Make sure to check out my live stream tomorrow when I'm going to be broadcasting election results to you guys. Have a nice day, you guys. Goodbye.